Did you know that your brain, this amazingly complex organ that feels so solid, is actually hollow? Yep, deep inside, there's this whole network of fluid-filled chambers, a kind of hidden river system that is absolutely essential for your survival. So let's dive right into this incredible internal world.
And I'm not being metaphorical here. We're talking about a real, flowing liquid. It has a current, a source, a destination, all tucked away inside your skull. Understanding the path it takes is really the key to understanding the health of your entire central nervous system.
Okay, so before we can trace these rivers, we really need a map of the area. Let's get a quick lay of the land, just to understand where everything fits together.
So here's something you might find surprising. The brain's layout is the total opposite of the spinal cord's. In your spinal cord, the gray matter, that's where the main neuron bodies are. It's on the inside, like the core of a cable. But in the brain, it completely flips the script. The gray matter is on the outside, forming that famous wrinkly cortex. And the white matter, all the connecting highways, is deep inside. And it's right there, within that internal white matter, that our hidden rivers flow.
All right, now that we've got our bearings, it's time to meet the star of the show, the fluid itself. This is the story of cerebrospinal fluid, or as we call it, CSF.
I want you to think of CSF as the brain's personal bodyguard and its life support system, all in one. It's this crystal clear fluid that gives your brain buoyancy, so it literally floats inside your skull and doesn't get crushed by its own weight. It's also a shock absorber, and on top of that, it circulates nutrients and clears out waste products. Pretty important stuff.
So, where does this journey begin? It starts in the ventricles. Now, these aren't solid things. They are the open cavities, the riverbeds, if you will, that produce and hold all this CSF. There are 4 of them, and they're all connected in a very specific, very vital sequence.
Okay, so follow the flow here because the pathway is everything. The CSF is made in these 2 big C-shaped chambers called the lateral ventricles. From there, it has to squeeze through this tiny little opening, the foramen of Monro, to get to the 3rd ventricle, right in the middle of the brain. Then it funnels down an even tinier channel, the cerebral aqueduct, to reach the 4th ventricle. And from there, it finally escapes through a few small openings to basically coat the entire outside of the brain and spinal cord. It's quite a trip.
Now, this very specific path also happens to be the system's greatest weakness. You see those 2 narrow passages we just talked about, the foramen of Monro and that cerebral aqueduct? Well, they are natural choke points. If anything blocks one of them, the whole system backs up like a clogged drain, and that's when you get into some really serious trouble.
So once the CSF escapes the ventricles, its job isn't done, not by a long shot. It now enters a new space where it gets to perform its most famous role, being the brain's personal protective cushion.
And this space is called the subarachnoid space. It's this fluid-filled layer that just wraps around the entire central nervous system. Here, the CSF is basically a liquid helmet, protecting you from all the little bumps and jolts of everyday life. But this is also where the CSF's life cycle comes to an end. It gets recycled, reabsorbed back into your blood through these tiny one-way valves called arachnoid villi.
And that brings us to the single most critical rule of this entire system: balance. Your brain is constantly making new CSF, about half a liter every single day. So to keep the pressure inside your skull perfectly stable, it has to drain that exact same amount. Production has to equal absorption. It's this delicate, non-stop balancing act.
But what happens when that balance is broken? What happens when the river gets dammed?
Well, think about it. The production, the faucet, it doesn't just turn off. The fluid keeps getting made in the ventricles, but now it has absolutely nowhere to go. So the pressure starts to build, and it's all happening inside a rigid, unforgiving box, your skull.
This dangerous condition has a name: hydrocephalus. It literally means water on the brain. The ventricles just swell up like balloons, pushing on and compressing all the delicate brain tissue around them.
So what can cause a blockage? Well, it can be a number of things. A tumor could grow and physically just squeeze one of those passages shut. Or scar tissue from an infection, like meningitis, could clog up those little drainage valves. Sometimes the problem isn't even a blockage, but an issue with absorption. Maybe a blood clot in the veins prevents the CSF from draining out properly.
Okay, so how do doctors actually see all this? They use MRI scans. And there's a really simple trick for telling the 2 main types of scans apart. Just remember, WW2. Water is white on a T2. So on a T2-weighted MRI, all that CSF in the ventricles is going to glow bright white, which makes it super easy to spot if those ventricles are getting too big.
And one of the most critical things radiologists look for is a little membrane called the septum pellucidum.
It separates the two big lateral ventricles, and it should be perfectly in the middle. Think of it like the trachea in your neck. Doctors always check if that's midline. Well, if the septum pellucidum is pushed off to one side on a scan, that is a huge red flag that something, a tumor, a bleed, is taking up space and creating dangerous pressure.
When this pressure builds up slowly, especially in adults, it can cause a classic set of symptoms. It's known as the 3 Ws. Wet for urinary incontinence, wacky for dementia or cognitive changes, and wobbly for problems with walking, with their gait. Seeing this trio of symptoms immediately makes doctors think about a problem with CSF flow.
So when you think about it, this whole journey, from a tiny cell in the choroid plexus, through all these chambers and narrow channels, out into that protective cushion, and finally back into the blood, it's this constant, silent, and absolutely vital process that keeps your brain healthy every single second of every day.
It's really just a reminder of the incredible, complex machinery that's always running just beneath the surface without us ever thinking about it. This delicate fluid balance is just one of them. It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? What other invisible systems are working in perfect harmony inside you,